It started as a whisper, barely a breeze in the chaos of celebrity gossip. But that whisper turned into a storm, and now Montecito is on fire. Not from the wildfires that plague California's coast, but from something far more explosive. A rumor so wild, so unthinkable, it's threatening to blow the Sussex brand sky high. Forget the tell-all interviews. Forget the Spotify fallout, the Netflix flops, or the ghosted royal Christmas invites. This is bigger. Because this time, the controversy isn't about what Meghan said. It's about what she might have hidden. A daughter, not Archie, not Lilibet, but a full-grown woman, allegedly kept out of sight, was buried under years of silence and spin. A secret child. The claim? That long before tiaras, titles, and televised therapy sessions, Meghan Markle gave birth to a daughter, and then spent her rise to fame pretending she didn't exist. At first, it sounded like tabloid nonsense, but the story wouldn't die. It clawed its way through comment sections, burned across Twitter threads, and left even seasoned royal reporters shaking their heads. Because this wasn't just a rumor, it had receipts, photos, emails, hints hidden in interviews, and then came the video. Suddenly, Harry was reportedly in tears. Meghan's team was in full crisis mode, and the palace? Silent, watching, maybe even smirking. The fairy tale is cracking. The mask is slipping. And what's waiting beneath could be the most devastating royal scandal since Edward and Wallace. But that's just the beginning, because what came next, no one saw coming. It didn't begin with a royal announcement or a bombshell interview. No, this wildfire was sparked by something far more subtle. A forgotten snapshot, buried in the depths of the internet. At first glance, it looked like just another throwback. Grainy lighting, clumsy flash. Meghan Markle in her pre-fame era. Think mid-2000s, low-rise jeans, smoky eyeliner, and that unmistakable Hollywood hustle in her eyes. These were the days before Buckingham Palace, before Oprah specials, before Duchess was even a possibility. But someone noticed something strange. In the background of more than one of those old photos, there she was, a young girl, not front and center, not posing, just there, always lurking on the edges of the frame. Too consistent to be a coincidence, too familiar to ignore. Same almond-shaped eyes, same sharp chin, same smirk. That signature Markle smirk. Reddit sleuths latched on instantly. Twitter detectives followed. And within hours, the theory took shape. Who is that girl? Why does she look exactly like Meghan? And why has no one ever mentioned her before? What started as speculation became obsession. Social media went full CSI. They tore through ancient MySpace profiles, modeling agency rosters, paparazzi shots from backlot parties, and random LA red carpets. Then came the real gut punch. Someone uncovered an old email exchange from a now-defunct casting website. In it, Meghan had referenced "my baby girl" in passing, brushed off as slang at the time. But now, it read like a confession. And the crown jewel of it all? A 2007 interview clip where Meghan casually said, "I feel like I'm already a mom sometimes," while talking about her responsibilities off camera. No one paid attention to it back then. But with fresh eyes, that throwaway quote sounded more like a slip-up. The pieces were starting to fall into place. This wasn't just an old photo, it was a matchstick. And the internet had just lit the fuse. But the flames didn't stop there, because what came next would drag Meghan's past into the spotlight and expose a truth no one expected. By the time the sun rose over Montecito, the story had exploded. What started as whispers in Reddit threads had erupted into a media inferno. Tabloids pounced like sharks on blood. Front pages screamed in bold, accusatory fonts. Markle's secret daughter exposed, and royal scandal erupts over hidden child. The headlines weren't subtle, and they weren't waiting for facts. Twitter was a battlefield. TikTok turned into a crime scene investigation board. Instagram Reels played dramatic mashups of Meghan's past interviews over screenshots of that mysterious girl, zooming in on eye shapes and cheek dimples like it was a paternity test gone viral. And then the hashtags began. Secret Sussex, Meghan Markle daughter drama, Meghan Markle exposed. They trended globally within hours. Memes flooded the internet. Armchair psychologists, royal biographers, and ex-Hollywood acquaintances all jumped in to speculate. The theory wasn't just catching on, it was being treated as truth. And where was Harry? Nowhere to be seen. Insiders whispered that he had barricaded himself in Montecito's so-called meditation room, which, let's be honest, sounded more like a panic room dressed up with Himalayan salt lamps and ethically sourced sage. According to one report, he was inconsolable, weeping into his hands as the media circus circled overhead. Meanwhile, Meghan's team scrambled to shut it down. Publicists blasted inboxes with carefully worded denials. Sources close to Meghan deny the claims. Lifestyle magazines published glossy rebuttals that read more like perfume ads than crisis statements. Polished, emotionless, robotic. But it wasn't working. Because no matter how hard they tried to kill the story, it refused to die. In fact, every attempt to bury it only made it louder. Every no comment felt like a red flag. Every denial sparked more questions. And just when it felt like Meghan's PR wall might hold, someone from her past picked up a microphone. They say the people who know you best are the ones who can hurt you the most. And in Meghan's case, it wasn't a tabloid or a royal source who dropped the next bomb. It was someone who used to call her a friend. She didn't come out of nowhere. The woman, dubbed Cassie by online sleuths, wasn't some anonymous troll in a basement. She was a real name in Meghan's early circle. Someone who once shared dressing rooms, cheap wine, and dreams of stardom back when Meghan was just another aspiring actress hustling in Hollywood. Cassie didn't scream or accuse. She didn't need to. Her voice in the interview was calm, beyond controlled, like someone who'd rehearsed this moment 100 times in her head. According to Cassie, Meghan had once confided in her, years before Suits, before the palace, before Harry. They were sitting in a cramped apartment in Studio City, eating takeout and talking about life, careers, and what they'd do if they ever made it big. That's when Meghan allegedly dropped the secret. Not in a dramatic confession, but in the middle of a story. I had to make choices. I had to lock some things away. If they ever found out, Cassie says she brushed it off back then. Everyone in Hollywood had a past. Everyone had something they wanted to keep quiet. But now, with the rumors swirling, the photo comparisons stacking up, and that viral Instagram video burning through the internet, it all clicked. She wasn't bitter. She didn't sound jealous. She sounded concerned. Because Cassie claimed Meghan's biggest fear wasn't being exposed by the media. It was that Harry would find out. That everything she built, her royal image, her brand, her empire, would crumble the moment her perfectly curated past collided with the truth. And suddenly, the stakes were no longer just about bad PR or trending hashtags. They were about betrayal. Because if this was true, if Meghan really kept something this big from Harry, then this wasn't just a PR scandal. It was a marriage hanging by a thread. Cassie ended the interview with one sentence that set the internet ablaze. Meghan always said image was everything, but some images don't go away. Chilling. The video clip racked up millions of views in hours. And while Meghan's camp stayed silent, Harry's name started trending alongside the word betrayed. People weren't just questioning Meghan anymore. They were starting to pity Harry. But as the world reeled from Cassie's claims, an even bigger twist was coming. One that wouldn't come from the past, but from the present. Because someone else had just spoken out, and she wasn't hiding behind a pseudonym. For days, the internet spiraled into chaos. Debates, denials, distractions. But just when it felt like the fire might burn out, a single video poured gasoline on the flames. Late one night, a previously ignored Instagram account suddenly came to life. The username is Forgotten Sussex. Until that point, most assumed it was just another troll account chasing clout. It had posted a few cryptic captions in the weeks prior. Things like, "She said I'd understand one day," and "Bloodlines aren't always chosen." Enough to raise eyebrows, but vague enough to ignore. But this time, it wasn't a caption. It was a video. No filters, no music, no drama. Just a plain white wall, soft lighting, and a girl, no older than her early 20s, staring straight into the camera, calm, still, like she'd waited her entire life for this moment. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't even say Meghan's name. All she said was, "You always told me to stay hidden because my existence would ruin your crown." And then she smiled. That same crooked, confident, camera-ready smile that Meghan flashes on every red carpet. A smile so specific, so unmistakable, that within seconds, comment sections were in meltdown mode. People froze the frame, zoomed in, compared jawlines, brows, and dimples. The uncanny resemblance was undeniable. It wasn't just similar, it was eerie. The same almond-shaped eyes, the same left cheek dimple, the same slight head tilt when smiling. The video was only 27 seconds long, but it detonated like a bomb. By the next morning, it had racked up 10 million views. Twitter threads turned into full-blown conspiracy maps. TikTok users posted side-by-side breakdowns like amateur forensic analysts. DNA TikTok trended. Eyebrow arch analysis, nose bridge measurements, and even dental comparisons. Suddenly, the question wasn't, is this real? It was, why hasn't Meghan responded? Even news outlets that usually tread lightly around the Sussexes picked it up. One American anchor didn't hold back. If this is true, this isn't just a scandal. It's the story of the decade. Meanwhile, back in Montecito, insiders whispered that chaos had hit the mansion like a sledgehammer. Meghan's PR team reportedly went into full-blown panic mode, making frantic 3 a.m. phone calls to every tabloid editor and Hollywood power broker they could reach. They wanted the video gone, everywhere. But it was too late. The clip had been downloaded, mirrored, reshared, and embedded on every platform imaginable. And the silence from Meghan's camp, it spoke volumes. While her reps issued a vague no comment, and lifestyle outlets ran soft rebuttals full of carefully chosen words, she herself stayed silent. Not a tweet, not a denial, not even a cryptic quote about protecting peace. And Harry? not a word. But insiders painted a darker picture. One claimed Harry had gone ghost, turning off his phone and storming out of the house. Another said he was pacing around their Montecito compound like a caged animal. Because this wasn't just bad press. This was family. This was Meghan's past, crashing headfirst into the carefully crafted image they'd spent years and millions trying to control. And worse, the girl in the video didn't post again. No follow-up, no explanation, just silence, which made the speculation even more suffocating. Was she real? Was she silenced? Or was she waiting to strike again, this time with undeniable proof? Because if that girl really was Meghan's daughter, and if she had more than just a resemblance, then the entire Sussex fairy tale was about to collapse. The video had detonated across the internet like a heat-seeking missile. But the real damage came from something far smaller. Just 5 words. It didn't come from Meghan, not directly, not from Harry either. It came from a journalist, one of the few still in Meghan's trusted circle. Trying to do damage control, the journalist appeared on a podcast, spinning the usual PR fluff. Meghan was deeply hurt by the baseless rumors, focused on her family, ignoring the noise. You know, the same phrases rolled out every time a scandal threatened to pull the curtain back. But then, almost as a throwaway, they said it. The girl in that video has no legal claim to the Sussex name. Wait, what? The host didn't catch it. The audience barely reacted. But the internet? The internet exploded. Because no one had been talking about legal claims, no one was talking about lawsuits or rights or inheritance until that moment. And just like that, the narrative shifted. Why mention legal claims unless there's something real to claim? Why not just say the story is fake? Why invoke legal language unless you're worried about legal consequences? It was like watching someone try to smother a fire while holding a can of gasoline. The clip went viral within the hour. Screen recorded, clipped, captioned, translated. It spread faster than the original Instagram video. Commenters zeroed in like heat-seeking missiles. Oops, that's not how you deny a lie. Legal claim, legal risk, truth, they just admitted there's something to hide. It was the first visible crack in Meghan's PR wall. Not a rumor, not a theory, a slip, a mistake made by someone inside the fortress. And once that slip went public, the damage spiraled. Suddenly, legal analysts were weighing in on morning talk shows. Family law experts speculated about parental rights, paternity disputes, and the implications of someone like Meghan allegedly keeping a child secret, especially now that she's tied to the British royal lineage. If this girl, whatever she was, had a biological connection, that meant potential claims to inheritance, financial support, trusts, even titles. And here's where things got nuclear. If Harry didn't know, and this daughter existed before they were married, then the royal family might be completely blindsided too. The question wasn't just who is she, it became who else knew. Did Meghan's family know? Did Doria? Did palace officials ever hear whispers and bury them? Did Meghan ever tell Harry the full truth about her past before he abandoned his royal life for her? Because suddenly, this wasn't just a story about a secret daughter. It was a story about trust, about lies, about a man who gave up everything and may have been left in the dark. And as this narrative spiraled out of control, you could practically hear the champagne corks popping in Kensington Palace. Because for the royals, so often on defense in the court of public opinion, this was karmic gold. Harry and Meghan had spent years firing shots at the firm. Now, the firm didn't need to respond. They just watched as the Sussex brand did what no royal takedown ever could, imploded from the inside. But this wasn't just about reputation. Because if the girl in the video was Meghan's daughter, the entire royal line of succession and millions in legacy wealth could be thrown into question. At first, the scandal seemed like just another clickbait saga, ripe for gossip, brutal for reputation, but ultimately manageable with enough PR polish. But as the smoke cleared and the legal questions began to rise, the implications turned nuclear. This wasn't just about Meghan's image. This was about money, titles, succession, legacy. And suddenly, every palace insider, lawyer, and royal historian was paying attention. Because if the girl in that video was real, if she was truly Meghan's biological daughter, then the fallout wouldn't be confined to Montecito. It would ripple across the royal world like a thunderclap. Let's start with the obvious: inheritance. Meghan and Harry's children, Archie and Lilibet, are already part of the royal bloodline. They've been granted titles. They're named in legal documents, trust funds, and royal wills. But what happens if there's another child? One who wasn't acknowledged, never included, but suddenly appears with a potential biological claim? If this alleged daughter were to take legal action, file a paternity suit, demand recognition, or even seek a DNA test from Harry, it could open a royal can of worms, not just in California courts, but across the pond in the UK. And while the monarchy is technically exempt from many legal entanglements, Harry is not. His assets, his inheritance from Diana, even future funds linked to Charles's estate, could suddenly be in play. Lawyers began whispering the words that send chills down any royal spine: precedent, petition, probate, press. Theoretically, the girl, if proven to be Meghan's biological daughter, could demand financial support. She could challenge trust allocations. And depending on when she was born, she could even complicate the long-term legal standing of Archie and Lilibet's own entitlements. The Sussex brand had been built like a house of cards on carefully orchestrated messaging. A young, progressive family breaking away from the stuffy traditions of the crown. The perfect nuclear unit, the doting father, the radiant mother, the innocent children. But now, that illusion was collapsing because nothing about it was clean. Nothing about it was controlled. And the one thing Meghan and Harry had always relied on, their image, was turning into their greatest liability. Even worse, Hollywood was starting to back away. Brands that once tripped over themselves to be linked to the Sussexes were suddenly radio silent. Sponsorships paused. Collaborations reevaluated. The emails that once came hourly slowed to a trickle. Because in Hollywood, perception is currency. And right now, Meghan's stock was plummeting. Executives whispered about reputational risk. Streaming insiders said there were concerns about volatility. Even the most loyal Meghan-friendly influencers began posting less and less. The power couple image, the one that graced magazine covers and Netflix promos, was now associated with chaos, confusion, and crisis. And through it all, the palace, still silent. Not a word from Charles, not a flinch from William, no statements, no interviews, no denials, because they didn't need to lift a finger. The Sussexes were unraveling on their own, and for Harry, the pressure was reportedly unbearable. Insiders said he was in freefall, emotionally, psychologically, maybe even spiritually, because this wasn't just a scandal threatening his public image. It was a direct hit to his personal identity. He left everything behind for Meghan: the crown, his family, the military titles, the royal responsibilities, the privileges of the institution. He walked away, claiming it was for love, for freedom, for a better life. And now he was facing the possibility that he never truly knew the woman he left it all for, that he gave up his legacy for a lie. But the worst part? It wasn't over, because somewhere out there, the alleged daughter remained silent, watching, waiting. And what came next could turn scandal into catastrophe. While the world watched the headlines with morbid fascination, behind the closed doors of Montecito, Prince Harry was coming undone. This wasn't the first time Harry had been at the center of a media storm. He'd weathered decades of press intrusion, Diana's death in front-page ink, Afghanistan scrutiny, the fallout from Spare, and a slew of public spats with the firm. But this was different, because this time, the storm wasn't circling around him. It was tearing through the very foundation of the life he'd built. Sources close to the Sussexes painted a grim picture. The moment the Instagram video went viral, Harry reportedly locked himself in one of the mansion's guest bedrooms and didn't emerge for nearly a full day. Not for food, not for calls, not even for the kids. He was, in the words of one insider, shattered. Another source claimed that Harry eventually stormed out of the house barefoot, still in pajamas, got into his black Range Rover, and drove aimlessly down the Pacific Coast Highway for hours. No security, no phone, just him and a spinning mind full of questions that Meghan wasn't answering. He was spotted later that night in a parking lot near a secluded Malibu beach, hood over his head, sitting alone in the driver's seat. Locals say he looked like he'd been crying for hours, face red, eyes swollen, hands clenched into fists like a man wrestling demons. Because this wasn't just about the press, it was personal, intimate, devastating. This wasn't someone accusing him of hypocrisy. This was someone alleging that the mother of his children had kept a life-altering secret from him. And worse, he was starting to believe it might be true. Inside Montecito, the atmosphere was reportedly toxic. Staffers were told to keep their distance. Some were sent home entirely. The shouting matches between Meghan and Harry allegedly shook the walls. Harry, according to insiders, demanded proof. "Show me the birth certificate. Tell me when and where. Why didn't you ever tell me?" But Meghan wouldn't answer. At least not directly. She deflected, blamed the media, claimed the whole thing was an attack, that this was just another smear campaign designed to take them down. But Harry wasn't buying it. Not anymore. And here's where the spiral deepened. People close to the prince say he started calling old friends, ones he cut off after marrying Meghan, friends he hadn't spoken to in years, men who stood by him during his wild younger years, but were pushed out when Meghan entered the picture. He reportedly asked them if they knew, if they'd heard anything, if they'd tried to warn him, and some of them had. One reportedly told him, "We tried, mate. You didn't want to hear it." That alone sent Harry into a tailspin, because the harsh truth was hitting him hard. In his quest to protect Meghan, he had burned every bridge that kept him grounded. He left his country, his duty, his bloodline, all for a version of love that now felt fragile. Betrayal wasn't just a possibility. It was becoming his waking reality, and the cracks were showing everywhere. He canceled several charity appearances at the last minute, citing emotional exhaustion. He reportedly pulled out of an upcoming Veterans Gala he was slated to headline. Even in private circles, friends say he's withdrawn, barely speaking, chain texting therapists, questioning everything: his marriage, his judgment, even his decision to walk away from royal life. Because if Meghan really had hidden something so massive from him, what else might she be hiding? And just when Harry thought he'd hit rock bottom, another shockwave rattled the fragile foundation beneath him. This one didn't come from a rumor, or a friend, or a social media video. It came from a piece of paper, a document, signed, dated, filed, and it would change everything. The whispers had been relentless. The video had gone viral. The internet had lost its mind. But nothing prepared anyone for what dropped next. Because this time, it wasn't speculation, it was a document. On a quiet Tuesday morning, when the scandal was just beginning to plateau, an anonymous user posted what appeared to be an official California birth certificate. It was heavily redacted, names blurred, addresses blacked out, but not all of it. The date of birth? Clear. The location? Santa Monica, California. And the mother's legal name? Rachel Meghan Markle. It took the internet all of 5 seconds to remember. Meghan's real name is Rachel, and the timeline? It fit. Just early enough to precede her rise to fame, just late enough to be hidden. The internet combusted. Reddit threads turned into forensic investigations. Archive experts zoomed in on font spacing, seal impressions, and document formatting. TikTok became a courtroom. YouTube exploded with hour-long breakdowns comparing signature loops to Meghan's known handwriting. Was it real? Was it fake? Was it masterfully edited or an authentic leak? No one knew, but the timing couldn't have been more damning. Minutes after the document went live, the Instagram account claiming to be the secret daughter posted a single chilling word, proof, and then went dark. Again, Meghan's team scrambled into overdrive. Legal threats flew. A DMCA notice was filed within hours to have the document removed from multiple platforms. But the damage was done. By the time the first takedown notice reached a hosting site, the document had already been downloaded, reposted, and screenshotted tens of thousands of times. It was on message boards, fan pages, and even Reddit threads that had nothing to do with the royals. And for Meghan, the timing couldn't have been worse, because her upcoming lifestyle brand launch, an attempt to pivot away from the Netflix chaos and Spotify fallout, was just weeks away. A deal that reportedly included a line of motherhood journals and inspirational family candles. Now, the entire campaign was in limbo. One insider revealed that at least 2 brands were considering pulling out. Another said the team had postponed the launch entirely, calling it PR suicide to continue during a narrative collapse. Hollywood, once her playground, had turned into a closed door. Producers stopped calling. Brand partners stopped answering. A-list friends started posting curated vacation photos instead of birthday tributes. Even the kind press, those fluffy lifestyle outlets that once championed Meghan's every move, were going silent. Because here's the thing about scandal. It doesn't need to be true to ruin you. It just needs to feel true. And this felt real. The palace, meanwhile, remained an enigma. No statements, no reactions, no spin, just silence. But a very specific kind of silence. The kind that speaks volumes. The kind that lets your enemies hang themselves with their own rope. One insider reportedly told a royal correspondent, "The House of Windsor has learned the power of patience. Sometimes you don't need to strike. Just stand still and let the other side collapse." But the person feeling the collapse most wasn't Meghan, it was Harry. Because when the birth certificate hit the internet, he reportedly lost it. Not in rage, but in resignation. According to multiple sources, he didn't scream. He didn't even cry. He just sat on the back patio of the Montecito mansion, staring into the garden, holding the printed out document in his hands like it was a death certificate. He was overheard whispering, "Why didn't she tell me?" Staff say he didn't speak for hours. Others say he quietly packed a small overnight bag and left the house without saying a word. Not to Meghan, not to his team. Just gone. No press, no bodyguards, no public trail. Because when trust is gone, when your entire reality fractures, you don't fight, you flee. And while Harry disappeared into the fog of the California coast, Meghan was said to be in full-blown meltdown mode. The screams, the crying, the threats to sue everyone, the late-night calls to crisis PR teams and legal consultants, it was chaos. But it was too late, because now the story wasn't about speculation. It wasn't about Instagram videos or anonymous accounts. It was about a document, a paper trail, a timeline, and most damning of all, a silence from Meghan that no one could explain. But if you thought that was the peak of the chaos, you'd be wrong. Because what came next wasn't a post, or a leak, or even a headline. It was a void, a silence, a vanishing. For days, the world had been glued to the chaos. Every post, every clip, every leaked whisper had been dissected like gospel. The internet had turned into a courtroom, and Meghan Markle's entire past had become Exhibit A. But then, the voice at the center of it all disappeared. The anonymous Instagram account, Forgotten Sussex, that had ignited the wildfire with a 27-second video and a single-word follow-up, suddenly went dark. No posts, no stories, no comments, nothing. At first, people thought it was strategic. Maybe she was letting the evidence speak for itself. Maybe the girl behind the account had said everything she needed to say. But hours turned into days, and days turned into silence. No follow-up video, no interview, no appearance. And that silence, it was deafening. Because by now, the world was hooked, obsessed, begging for more. News anchors dedicated full segments to analyzing the pause. Psychologists weighed in. Was she scared? Was she silenced? Was she real at all? Even skeptics, those who dismissed the initial rumor as clickbait trash, began to fidget. Because the longer she stayed quiet, the louder the questions became. Was she threatened? Did Meghan's legal team shut her down? Or worse, was this girl real and now being hidden all over again? The theories snowballed. Some speculated that Meghan had paid her off in secret. Others believed Harry had found her and begged her to disappear. A darker corner of the internet suggested the account was a burner created by someone close to the palace, weaponized to destabilize the Sussex brand from within. And then, without warning, the account vanished. Not just silent. Deleted. Gone. The profile, the videos, the captions, wiped clean like they never existed. That's when the real panic set in. Because up until that moment, the public still had something to point to. Screenshots, receipts, a digital breadcrumb trail. But when the account disappeared, so did the only witness the world had. Suddenly, the firestorm took on a new tone, no longer just a scandal. Now it was a mystery, one that no one could control. Meghan's silence now screamed louder than ever. Because if the whole thing were false, if this were just an elaborate hoax, why not say so? Why not hold a press conference, post a photo, and show proof of denial? Why let the most damaging rumor of your life spiral into a media monster? Unless you couldn't. And Harry? He hadn't returned. Paparazzi staked out Montecito for days. No sign of the prince, no sign of the kids. Just Meghan, tight-lipped, visibly shaken, snapping at staff and skipping events. Even her normally polished team was starting to crack. One PR rep was spotted leaving the mansion in tears. Another reportedly leaked to a journalist, whispering, "We can't fix this. There's nothing left to spin." Inside palace walls, the silence was equally calculated. But off the record, the quotes were ice cold. One insider reportedly told a royal correspondent, "The monarchy doesn't need revenge. It just waits. And eventually, everyone tells on themselves." But the real dagger wasn't what was said. It was what wasn't. Because Meghan and Harry had spent years weaponizing visibility. Podcasts, interviews, Netflix specials, Oprah. They used their voice to control their truth, to dominate the narrative. And now, they had none. The girl, if she was Meghan's daughter, had vanished. And with her disappearance came something even worse than exposure. Suspicion without closure. A permanent shadow. One that would now hang over every photo of Archie and Lilibet, every family appearance, every speech about truth, healing, and parenting with compassion. Because whether or not the secret daughter was real, the doubt was. And doubt is poison. It seeps into everything. Every headline, every handshake, every brand deal, every royal reconciliation. And Meghan and Harry had just lost the one thing they thought they'd always have: control of their story. But the worst part? People weren't feeling sorry for them anymore. They were watching and waiting. Because the silence wasn't the end, it was the setup. Everyone could feel it. Something bigger was coming. And if the girl came back, if she returned with proof, the Sussex empire wouldn't just crack, it would collapse. For years, Meghan and Harry held the reins of their own narrative. They left the firm, lit the match with Oprah, and built an empire on curated vulnerability, polished victimhood, and glossy PR. They spoke of healing, of privacy, of liberation from a system that silenced them. But now, they've been out-silenced. Not by the palace, not by the tabloids, but by a single eerie voice, and the deafening lack of one. Because what unraveled in Montecito wasn't just a scandal. It was a full-blown collapse of the Sussex brand's core message, that they were the ones telling the truth. And when that truth was challenged, they had nothing to say. No raw honesty, no transparency. Just evasions, denials crafted by publicists, and radio silence when it mattered most. The forgotten daughter may or may not be real. The birth certificate might be genuine, or it might be the most elaborate hoax of the internet age. But here's what is real. The trust is broken. The illusion of the perfect couple, the perfect family, the carefully lit Montecito lifestyle has shattered like glass underfoot. Even their most loyal defenders are struggling to hold the line. Comment sections, once full of admiration, now read like interrogations. Reddit threads are rewriting the history of Meghan's Hollywood years. Media outlets that once tiptoed around criticism now ask pointed questions out loud. And Harry? He's nowhere to be found. Not at charity events, not in public, Not even on the Sussex Foundation's carefully curated social media. Because when trust is gone and silence reigns, even fairy tales turn dark. The woman who once dazzled the world with her modern Duchess glow is now a ghost surrounded by whispers. Her every move is viewed through a lens of suspicion. Her every quote is picked apart for what it doesn't say. And the prince who gave up his crown for love is standing in the ruins, possibly questioning if he ever truly knew the woman he built his world around. This wasn't a PR stumble. It was a freefall. One where silence wasn't golden. It was fatal. Because in the end, it wasn't the palace that destroyed Meghan and Harry's story. It was the one thing they never thought they'd lose: control. And once that slips away, there's no getting it back. Not with a podcast, not with a documentary, not even with a carefully staged family photo. Because the crown they feared losing might never have been theirs to begin with.